26-1 odds for this decision, and you guys made fun of Shakur Stevenson pre-fight when he said this.
So who you got in our main event tonight?
I think Tank on, I'm 50-50. I don't know. You don't know? Nah, I don't know. I can't make a prediction, but 50-50.
Roach and Tank Davis fight to a majority draw. The belt doesn't exchange hands. We have to go back to that 9th round when Tank took a knee for the first time in his career and the referee missed the call. In boxing, you go to a knee, it's a knockdown. Unbelievable. What do you guys think?
Okay, I thought he had hurt his hand. Did he not take the mouthpiece? Come on.
And that's right. Oh, here comes Davis.
What's up, fight fans? Welcome to my channel. This is Johnny, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the statistics that nobody talks about when mentioning last night's world title fight at 135 pounds between the champion Gervonta Davis and the challenger Lamont Roach. Guys, before I continue, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been with me since day one. And if you haven't already, could you please hit subscribe? 85% of the people currently watching my content haven't hit that button yet, so if you could do so, I say thank you. Also, like this video as well as hit the bell notification icon button. What that'll help me to do is every time I create something new, it'll pop up in your feed and you'll be notified. Thank you. Guys, last night's fight card and Barkley's lived up to the hype, in my opinion. The last 3 fights all had controversy, from the Sandor Martin to the Alberto Puello fight. People were torn on both sides. We know that decision went to Puello and the belt stayed with him. And then we had the co-main event, which was exciting in its own right, specifically with how dominant of a performance Gary Antoine Russell put on in spanking Rayo Valenzuela. I haven't seen a fighter at 140 pounds perform like that, like GAR did, in a long time. He exceeded most folks' expectations. He was an underdog going into that fight. And then obviously the main event with Tank and Roach. Stay tuned to the channel throughout the week. I'm going to be breaking down individually the Puello versus Martin fight as well as the GAR versus Rayo fight. But today, let's talk about what happened in the main event between Tank and Lamont Roach. We know the fight ended in a controversial majority draw. There's a few different storylines we need to talk about. Was Tank Davis exposed in his game planning? Did Lamont Roach lay out the blueprint for future fighters and future opponents to beat Tank Davis? And more importantly, the referee missing one of the most important calls in a world title fight in a long time in the 9th round when Tank Davis got hit with a scrape jab. The punch clearly lands. One of those sort of jabs that just brushes the eye, but doesn't in such a way to where it scratches the lens and you get blurry-eyed vision. He then takes a knee and the ref just stops the fight. Doesn't deduct him a point, has a little chat with Tank and lets the fight go on. We know when it came to an end, the scorecards were so close in such a way that if that would have been ruled a knockdown and Roach gets round 9, 10-8, he wins the fight. He becomes a 2-division world champion and the first to defeat Tank Davis. After it was all said and done, a lot of fighters had a lot of things to say about it. Let's have a look at what Terrence Crawford and Devin Haney had to say about it. If you're Tank Davis or you're a Tank Davis fan, how he's been going about his business, especially online, the things he says over the last few years about him being the face of boxing, him being the best boxer of his era, he compares himself to Floyd Mayweather. You leave yourself open for criticism when you don't have a stellar performance. Now, in my opinion, I think Tank was a little bit off. I think, though, that his game planning, it's always about, what do we say, what have you done for me lately? He was 30-0, 28 knockouts going to this fight. His approach and his attack have worked every single time he's fought somebody, so why change it? In this approach, it takes him a little while to get warmed up. He computes the data of his opponent, and mid to late rounds, he usually knocks his opponent out. The difference was with Lamont Roach, it was a common foe. They had fought before a couple times in the amateurs, and leading up to fight week, a lot of us were saying that Lamont Roach's confidence was manufactured, but what we saw on fight night, it was true. Lamont Roach did not fear Tank Davis. Were they hesitant in the first few rounds? Yes, both guys were. There wasn't a lot of action. There wasn't a lot of punches thrown, but you could feel the anxiety and the stress building up, and you knew that it was going to boil over. And around the 4th to 5th round, they started slugging. And in Lamont Roach, we saw a guy who was not afraid of Tank Davis at all. He was exchanging with him. He was getting the better of some of the exchanges. And I think it had to do with a little bit of Lamont believed in himself, but it had to take him a while within the fight for him to believe in himself even more, that he belonged there and that he could beat Tank. And by the mid to late rounds, you saw a guy who was outboxing Tank. You saw a guy who wasn't taking back steps, who was countering him, and there were some gorgeous exchanges on both sides. This isn't all bad for Tank Davis. It is a draw on his record, but it's not a loss. And I want to go over today in this video, I want to go over those punch stats, which will surprise most of you people. Before we continue, I want to ask, was this a robbery? Now, we're going to go over the total punch stats, the jabs, and the power punches. So if you stand on the line to say it wasn't a robbery, just so you know, Lamont Roach outpunched Tank, and he outlanded Tank. And in that 9th round, that was a knockdown. The knee to the ground is a knockdown, 10-8 round. Lamont then wins a decision on the scorecards, but we know what happened. So moving forward, you in the comment section below answer this question right now. Was this a robbery? Should Lamont Roach be awarded the 135 WBA world title? Moving forward, let's take a closer look at these stats that told the story of the fight. Let's look at the total jabs thrown throughout the entire fight. Tank Davis throws 69, landing 10 at a 15% clip. Roach throws 148, landing 25 at a 17% clip. We knew it was going to be orthodox versus southpaw, and Roach was going to use his jab to parry. He was going to use his jab to feint, to set up his backhand, and this is why he almost triples up Davis on punches thrown and over doubles him on jabs landed. Power punches throughout the fight. Tank throws 210, landing 93 at a 44% clip. Lamont Roach throws 252 power punches, landing 87 at a 35% clip. So Roach wasn't as accurate, but who would have thought that he would have outpunched power punches with Tank Davis? Tank landed 48 to the body, Roach landed 30. And overall total punches, this is a stat that shocks most people, myself included. Tank throws 279, landing 103 at a 37% clip. Roach throws 400, landing 112 at a 28% clip. So Roach wasn't as accurate. He threw more, which always is the case with Tank's opponents. But what we never see is Tank's opponents landing more. Now, this is what started happening around the mid to late rounds. I want to say something that you could take this however you want it. My biggest beef with Tank Davis in this fight wasn't him fighting Lamont Roach to a draw. Roach put Tank in a position to have to fight him. So we know what we saw with what we saw. My biggest beef with Tank was his lack of concentration, him talking to the referee, almost coming off as like he's complaining. This was before round 9. Somewhere around rounds 4 or 5, he's turning to the ref, he's talking to the people in the crowd. We've seen him do this before, but then in between rounds, he's arguing with his corner. And Tank has always been able to get away with this sort of behavior and never had to pay for it. And I think in this fight, we got to see the fractures in his mindset, specifically when the lights are bright and the tension is boiling over. And it was the first time in my eyes watching Tank that I saw a guy doubting himself. Let's take a closer look at that knee he took in the 9th, which was a knockdown. Listen what Tank had to say about it.
I just got my hair done 2 days ago and she put grease in my shit, so the shit was like, you know, like when you sweating and things like that and the grease come in my face, it burnt my eyes type shit. Damn, why y'all booing like I'm saying bullshit? Like, this is real facts.
I'm gonna debunk that real quick. Tank said that it's a chemical that his person who did his braids put in his hair that got into his eye and stung. Now, if we didn't have video footage of Roach landing a jab, not flush, but just grazing the eye, then maybe that's an excuse. Also, Tank, if we didn't have a female division, women box. All women put things in their hair. When's the last time you saw a woman take a knee because they said they got chemical in her eye? I've checked over the last 12 hours. I couldn't find any footage of any female boxer taking a knee, taking a knockdown, saying that hair products were in their eye and it was burning. Tank Davis, come on, man. That is an excuse that's gonna follow him around the rest of his career. And it's funny to see the casuals, it's funny to see the haters, and it's funny to see the boxing fandom. We know we're as fickle as what have you done for me lately, and people were turning on Tank instantly. The fans were booing him when he said that excuse. So I want to ask you guys right now, was it a robbery? Was it a knockdown? Does Tank lose anything in the public's eye with how he handled the adversity? And where do you put Lamont Roach now? Because in my opinion, this is not a controversial statement. That guy's stock grew through the roof with his performance. I think he always knew the dog he had in him, but he just proved the world that he was right in assessing that he does belong. What happens next with both fighters? Do you want to see a rematch? Your opinion of the fight, leave all that in the comment section below.